Hey everyone, so today I have a very interesting story from a great book. The book's called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It's a very well-known book giving advice on investing and personal finance. But this story is just entertaining and maybe it'll teach you some life lessons. And more so, it'll just teach you how ridiculous people are. So if you want a really ridiculous story on the same lines, just Google Ponzi scheme and find out about the guy who invented the term Ponzi scheme, why it was named Ponzi scheme. His last name is Ponzi. And another great one's the Enron story about how these people literally just cheated, lied on their books, and manipulated millions to make millions, and then got caught because the common theme behind all this is that like you're going to get caught eventually, and you can't just keep peddling it on forever. And so this is an interesting story. It's called Z-Best. Z-Best was actually the name of a carpet cleaning company in the 1980s, which was only a couple decades ago, which is quite amazing. So there's this man, and he's still alive today. His name is Minko. That's his last name. Barry Minko. Now, this is a very interesting man. And he's someone you should learn to not follow. This is an example of how not following your ethics and being honest can just screw you over. Yeah. So, Minko did a lot of stuff when he was very young. He worked evenings and summers and saved up $6,000 in 4 years cleaning carpets. And eventually he started this business called Z-Best, which was a steam cleaning business. And what he did was he built this into seemingly a $1 million cleaning business by the time he was in high school. And then by the time he was 18 years old, he was a millionaire. And from there, things started going a little awry. He started spending a lot of money. He bought a red Ferrari. He lived in a $700,000 home with a large pool with the big black letter Z painted at the bottom. And then he made this great book. Not really a great book. I haven't read it. Who knows if it's great. It's probably not that great. It's called Making It in America. And it all seems really great, right? Then he starts a whole drug campaign. And it's like, my act is clean. How's yours? That was his slogan. Like, I'm a great guy. What about you? And the company had 1,300 employees. And it was spreading across the nation. And then things start falling apart, you know. Here he is, a man who's saying, I'm going to be better than IBM. I'm going to be the IBM of carpet cleaning. I'll be better than General Motors. And he was peddling this to investors. And the company was just ridiculous. And then everything fell apart because guess what? It was a Ponzi scheme. Now, it may not have started out as one, but it turned into one. Now, what's a Ponzi scheme? It's basically this idea where this man in the forefront, it would say like, hey, I got a great way for you to make a lot of money. Just give me your money. They take that money, and they convince the people that they've told to share this with their friends. And then their friends put in money, and they use that money to make it seem like the initial money increased. And it just keeps growing like a pyramid. And then more and more people get into it, and they see, oh my goodness, the first people who got into it got more money. I'll put more and more money. And it spreads because one person tells 3 or 5 or 10, and then you got 10 people putting in their money, 100, 1,000, and then you just got this huge inflow of money. But the problem with this whole system is that you have to keep peddling it forever, and it's going to keep growing. And the problem with that is, at some point, you can't just keep growing forever. You can't convince the entire world that this thing's going to work, and you're going to run out of people to take their money and keep up the charade. And so the whole system, by nature, is telling you like at some point you will screw yourself over and everything will be revealed. And it's the most bizarre thing, but if you look up Ponzi schemes on Wikipedia, there's so many different variations that still keep popping up, and big ones, huge ones that have been orchestrated. It's just like they all eventually pop, and eventually you're going to get caught. Eventually someone's going to catch on, and eventually it's going to go so big that you can't, people are going to be saying, what happened to my money? And a lot of these people who do these Ponzi schemes, they're spending their money. It's like, I guess people in Enron, they know that they're screwed, and they're like, I guess what they do is that they just, light a cigar and just say, well, I'm screwed anyways, might as well spend the money I've stolen now. So they're literally buying fancy cars in fancy airplanes and just like overcome with guilt and anxiety and fear that they'll be like found out and thrown in jail. It's just like horrendous. Like, how can you sleep at night? They can't sleep at night, and it does horrors for your health, how you feel as a person, all this horrible stuff. And so this man's an example of how it just blows up. And again, the story's not over, mind you. That's just the beginning. It gets more interesting. So first off, we have this picture of this man who's like, not only is he doing well, but he's like putting on this persona of I'm a great guy, and then it all falls apart. In addition to that, it turns out he was laundering money for the mob with this company. And so I feel like it started off as something clean, like his first $6,000 as a young kid, probably legit. And he just turned it into something it wasn't. And he was probably approached by sketchy people in the gang, and they told him to money launder, which is pretty much, hey, we got all this money that we got illegally from selling drugs or gambling. How about we trade it in, give it to you, and you'll swap it out through the bank, put it into the bank anonymously or whatever, and give us clean money. And that way they can't trace it back to us, and we'll be clean. And then we could use this clean money, and we'll give you a cut of it. And so he probably got greedy, and that greed cost him. And I very much like certain systems, like certain economies where just doing the right thing gets you better results in the long run, because not only do you get better results, but you feel better, you can sleep better at night, you feel great about you, you're not riddled with guilt. Because I feel like most people don't, from my experiences watching documentaries of people who rob, steal, stuff like that. I watched a documentary on like the best thieves in Latin America, and they do some ridiculous stuff. They have real pickpocketing skills beyond your belief. And even them, when they were interviewed, they realized that, hey, I don't want to do this forever. I don't like the fact that I'm stealing, because I know it's not good religiously, and although I'm not religious, I know it's not good, and it doesn't make me feel good. So I feel like most people, they don't like doing bad stuff. And so long story short, things get worse. So here he is, and he's caught in all sorts of problems, and he's thrown in jail. And he's thrown in jail for many of years, and he apparently did a bunch of other ridiculous stuff, fictitious, to make it seem like his company was making millions, fictitious contracts, phony credit card charges, and everything else. And then he skimmed millions from the company's treasury for his own personal use, and did all this ridiculous stuff, thinking that he would never get caught. And what happened next was quite ridiculous. He was sentenced to 25 years in jail, made to pay $26 million, and eventually he got out of jail. And so in jail, he obtains his bachelor's degree, his master's degree, and he becomes a born-again Christian. So all seems well, right? All seems very peachy and fine. And again, what you see here is this is a great example of of someone that cannot be trusted, who uh, can sell. He can sell you, but he keeps going back to his ways when no one's looking. And he has this great image of being this man who's just like morals, ethics, and it's just ridiculous. And I think it's a life lesson in that sometimes you have to really look into someone. You can't just uh, trust them for who they are. And so he comes out of jail, and I don't think he spent 25 years in jail. He somehow got it down to like 6 years. And so uh, when he was sentenced, the judge told him, "You're dangerous because you have this gift of gab, this ability to communicate, and you don't have a conscience." And so he was sentenced to jail, and now he's back out. And now he's, in addition to getting these degrees, he starts this radio show, and he becomes a pastor, and he gives all these congregations about um, uh, ethics and morality, and it becomes his whole message. And he's using these unique skills as a communicator to speak out. And then he writes two more books that become fairly well sold. One's called The Clean Sweep. The second's called Fraud from A to Z Best. And then he starts a nationally syndicated radio program. He uses his charismatic skills to become a much in demand lecturer. And then he says, "We are a man remarks of him, we all believe he has a terrific future ahead of him in the world of television and writing." And so all this is going on. He's doing great stuff. And lo and behold, it turns out he's been doing a lot of bad stuff behind the scenes once again. Let me just pull it up real quick. Sorry. Here we go. And so he's written all these books, and he's helped tremendously in catching other people with fraud. And he worked with the police to catch a bunch of frauds, and one of the chief of staff of the police remarked on him and saying that he has caught many more people doing much more harm in frauds than he ever did in frauds himself. And it seems like everything was going well. And mind you, this man is still alive, and he's only like 44 years old. And lo and behold, here he goes again, and this is what happens. So let me give you the summarized version. And if you want, you can look on Wikipedia for the full version. His name's Barry Minkow. That's Minkow. And this is his story. So he comes out, and it turns out, after being released from jail, after quite a few years of seemingly doing well, it turns out he had admitted to helping deliberately drop down the stock price of home builder Lennar, and was ordered back to 5 more years of prison. And this happened in 2011. So 3 years later, he admits to defrauding his own church and was sentenced to additional 5 years in prison. And as a result of his crimes, he has to pay a total of $612 million in restitution, which will no doubt take the rest of his life to pay off. So that is the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, I think it's one thing to do a lot of horrendous stuff, because oftentimes it's partially luck and chance, in that sometimes you come into this world as a blank slate with certain genetic dispositions to do certain stuff, good or bad. And if you don't have the right mentor or teacher or parents or figure to teach you right from wrong and why you should do right from wrong, you can just end up like this. But what's interesting about this man's story is that in addition to this, Miko came out of there, and also before he went to jail at all, he put on this whole image of doing the right thing and doing good things. And I think it's multifaceted. Perhaps he thought that there were moments when he was really Christian, and then for some reason or other, he goes on for a few months straight doing the right thing, and then he bumps into maybe a sketchy, tempting situation again, where someone approaches him and says, "Hey, why don't you help me drive down the price of this stock?" Or whatever. Hey, he finds himself alone at the church and realizes if he can just change this number or do this little thing, he can take home a lot of money from the church illegally for his own personal use. And that sort of stuff is just like, it's like ridiculous. Especially for him to just like come about and say in the forefront, "Oh, I'm a virtuous person." So I think for him, it may come from maybe deep, dark psychological reasons, who knows, or from just not really fully being convinced or explained or really fully accepting that he shouldn't do this stuff, that it's not right. So it's a very interesting story. If you got nothing else out of it, it's very interesting. I guess if you got nothing else, one piece of useful life advice may be just to understand that some people cannot be trusted, and you can't always just trust someone based off how they appear. And Enron's a great example. There's a few documentaries I watched on Enron. It's quite clear that it's a great example of some of this stuff. And one thing you'll notice is that money is often one of the reasons for doing this. So yeah, that's it for this video. And I guess another video I've been itching to do is money is not the root of all evil. So let me know in the comments if you think that's something you'll be interested in. I don't think money is the root of all evil. I think it's a misconception that can be very quickly cleared. So stay tuned for that, and hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Thanks for watching.